Gojo Satoru is a powerful jujutsu sorcerer. Sorry guys. I mean Gojo is a lonely loser, and his Riz game is bad than you.
Emotional damage!
But he spends all his time at home, making over-the-top cosplay outfits for his dolls, ignoring every girl in class because he is a Sigma male. But one day when the most popular and hottest girl in his class discovers his skills, she's ready to do whatever it takes to convince him to make her cosplay. Everything kicks off when Gojo first saw the cute-looking Hina dolls that his grandpa Kaoru made by hand. That moment pulled him in, and he decided he wanted to make his own someday. But when a childhood friend found out, she freaked, calling it girly and weird, and that totally messed him up. Years later, Gojo is still the same quiet dude who gets overly excited just from looking at a pretty doll. That morning, he headed downstairs to help Kaoru cook breakfast. Kaoru joked, asking if he'd been up all night studying how to impress girls like other guys his age. Gojo shrugged, saying he was just painting his dolls. Kaoru sighed and said, "You know dolls don't make babies, right?" Gojo laughed and told him he had tens of girlfriends. After faking about his Dan Bilzerian lifestyle, Gojo dragged himself to school to deal with real world. Truth was, he didn't have anyone. Dude was straight up lonely, just like some of you guys Billy simps.
Emotional damage!
Sitting in class, he sighed, thinking maybe no one wanted to hang out with someone who spends all day staring at dolls and using tiny brushes to paint them. Out of nowhere, a blonde girl named Kita came flying toward him and smacked her head right on his desk. But guys, me and Gojo is thinking, where this came from. Her friends rushed over to check on her, and after saying sorry for the bump, Gojo got all nervous just from her talking to him just like a 80-year-old V-card holder. Then she noticed a weird spot on his arm and tried wiping it off.
We must stay focused, brothers. We must stay focused.
Gojo panicked, quickly saying it wasn't a big deal. She smiled, ran off, and luckily, no one realized it was ink. While that was happening, one of Kita's friends filled the group in about something that went down the day before. Apparently, this good-looking gym bro had been hanging out near their salon just to flirt with Kita. But the second he saw her anime keychains, he laughed and called her an anime nerd, just like you and me guys. That hit a nerve. Kita just rolled her eyes and walked off, thinking she'd rather clap by roadside beggar than talk to him again.
What do you mean by that?
Her friends weren't sure if she overreacted since the dude was hot, but Kita made it clear she can't stand guys who trash people for liking what they love. Hearing that, Gojo quietly squeezed his arm, feeling weirdly connected to what she said. He thought how cool it must be to have people around who actually accept you. Later that day, Gojo stayed after class to clean up, while the others bailed, making up random excuses. As he was wiping things down, the door creaked open and in came Kita. He figured she left something behind, but she walked right in and started helping him clean. Shocked, Gojo asked why. When she heard everyone ditched him, she called them out and said they were treating him like a doormat. Gojo just shrugged, saying he didn't mind helping. But Kita wasn't having it. She told him to stop bottling everything up. A few days later, Gojo accidentally poked himself while sewing, and Kaoru offered to grab a bandage. Alone, Gojo kept replaying Kita's words, realizing how much he's buried his feelings since that one girl called him out years ago. Just then, his sewing machine died. When Kaoru came back, they both agreed that machine was ancient. That night, bummed he couldn't finish the costume, Gojo suddenly came up with a new plan. The next afternoon after class, Gojo grabbed the old home ec sewing machine, the one nobody ever touched, and even brought along his slightly creepy-looking doll. Out of nowhere, Kita walked in, scaring the life out of him and making him drop it like it was cursed. He dove forward to catch it and braced himself, thinking she was about to roast him. But instead, Kita was straight up impressed that he knew how to use a sewing machine. She asked where he learned, and Gojo said his family ran a Hina doll shop. She then asked to see the doll he was holding. Gojo hesitated, but handed it over. When Kita called it beautiful, Gojo froze. No one had ever said something nice about his interests before. He explained that the doll was made by his grandpa, not him, because all he could make were clothes. That's when Kita started unbuttoning her school outfit. And he is thinking, maybe a BJ session, maybe happen. Without blinking, she told him to turn around, and Gojo, totally confused, just did as she said. When she gave the green light, he turned around to see her in a plain black dress. He asked what it was, and she passed him a photo of the outfit she was trying to copy. Gojo stared at it, low-key wondering if she stitched it with her eyes closed. He started pointing out everything that was off, totally going off on it until he noticed her eyes watering. Panicked, Gojo dropped to his knees and apologized like his life depended on it. Kita told Gojo not to stress, she wasn't mad at all. She explained that the reason the dress turned out so bad was because she wanted to get into cosplay. For her, dressing up like her favorite characters was the ultimate way to show love. Tell me in the comments, guys, what do you think by cosplay love? But since she didn't own a sewing machine, she had been using the schools, and clearly had no idea what she was doing. Then, a light bulb went off in her head. Kita turned to Gojo and asked if he could help her make cosplay outfits. Seeing how hyped she was about the whole thing, and thinking back to when she stood up for people who love what they love, he is thinking again. Now, maybe a BJ session finally will happen. But anyways, Gojo agreed to give it his all. She jumped around like a little kid, and he just stood there, shocked. He actually clicked with someone like her. As they talked more, Kita casually dropped the name of the character she wanted to cosplay, and it was from a full-blown adult game. Gojo blinked and asked her to repeat that. She clarified, saying it was a dating sim where the guy enrolls in a girl's school and, well, gets way more fun than you have in your entire life, guys. Gojo, stunned, admitted he was totally out of his depth. As Kita kept explaining the absolutely wild storyline of her game, Gojo struggled to keep up. Dude had never touched a controller in his life. At first, he figured she had to be trolling, but then he saw the sparkle of pure degenerate joy in her eyes and realized, oh no, she's dead serious. She started fangirling hard over a character named Shizuku, saying that if she couldn't be in a relationship with her, she'd at least want to become her. Gojo was quietly stunned by how genuinely happy she looked while talking about a game that definitely required only one hand to play. Tell me in the comments, guys, do you love one-hand game or not? When he nervously pointed out that the game sounded like it needed an age restriction, Kita suddenly developed selective hearing. He wasn't even shocked anymore that girls were into this stuff too. But Kita doubled down, saying it didn't matter if you were a guy or a girl, as long as you were enjoying it with the door locked, it was fair game. That brought back memories of the time his childhood friend mocked his hobbies, and right then, Gojo agreed to help without hesitation. As they started planning, Gojo reached for his phone to figure out where to begin, but Kita pulled out a full book guide, saying it had everything he needed. She admitted she still didn't get most of it and was worried he'd think she was dumb. Gojo just smiled and said he'd start with her measurements next time since it was already late. She nodded and thanked him, excited for their first real cosplay project. That night, Gojo lay in bed, thinking back on the crazy day and couldn't believe how much had happened. Curious, he opened the book Kita gave him and immediately got hit with the kind of content that'd make any pure soul run for cover. The next morning, the doorbell rang. Gojo opened it and was stunned to see Kita standing there. He asked how she even found his place, and she casually said she googled his name with Hina dolls, then camped outside in the bushes. Before he could react, she handed him a cake like it was totally normal and just walked inside. Kita went straight to his room and laughed at how messy it was. Then she noticed his doll brushes and bent down to check them out. Gojo, unfortunately, glanced at her from behind and all of his energy focused in his pants, and I don't know how he's controlling that kind of torture. Kita turned to him and casually said, "All right, let's get started." But being a 20-year V-card holder, Gojo completely misunderstood what Kita meant. She reminded him they still needed to take her measurements, but his brain short-circuited and he turned beet red. He nervously suggested maybe next time, because he could handle that torture, that he Evlock 7'd. When she asked why, he stammered and pointed out that the book she gave him seemed a little cultured, especially the part where it suggested taking measurements while in just underwear. Without hesitation, Kita popped open her shirt and helped to reach Gate of Heaven. I mean guys, she revealed that she was already wearing a swimsuit underneath, so no worries. Gojo froze, internally thinking how to clap her as soon as possible, but he had no choice but to begin. He decided to start with her head to play it safe, and tried to keep his hands steady so he wouldn't accidentally brush against her. But when Kita suddenly tilted her head to see what was taking so long, Gojo panicked and curled into full defense mode. After calming down, he asked her to turn around, figuring it'd be easier if he couldn't see her face. That plan backfired immediately when she shifted and gave him another unexpected angle, and Gojo was once again spiritually crushed. He asked how she wasn't embarrassed by any of this, but Kita just said she didn't care. Becoming Shizuku was the goal, and the instructions had to be followed. Feeling guilty, Gojo apologized for letting his brain wander and promised to take things seriously. Once she got dressed, he asked for game references to better design the outfit. Kita handed over 2 game CDs, but all Gojo could focus on was her swimsuit, just like me guys, who is getting the full view behind the plots. CDs, that's 1 CDs Ock and Saiyans. Later that night, Kaoru came home and nearly dropped his bags when he saw Gojo glued to the screen, fully focused on some super restricted video game. He figured his grandson had finally hit that age, but was stunned he needed to take notes. That night, Gojo had a wild dream where he proudly showed Kita the finished cosplay dress. But then things took a weird turn in the dream. She fully transformed into her character and suddenly lifted her skirt, flashing him without gate of heaven again. Dream Gojo was speechless. Reality, Gojo jolted awake in total panic, drenched in sweat and shame. Mortified, he told the nearby Hina doll to stop judging him. Later at school, he couldn't stop stressing about running into Kita, knowing she had starred in his very adult brain movie. Moments later, Kita strolled down the hallway, turning heads as usual. Everyone admired how stunning and confident she looked. She spotted Gojo, stopped, and warmly thanked him for all the help. That Saturday, Gojo blushed hard as flashes of the dream played back in his head. Meanwhile, Kita kept it casual, chatting like everything was normal. Out of nowhere, her group of friends appeared, just like your ex showing up the second you're doing fine. One of the girls noticed Gojo's nerves and suggested maybe they should give him space. Kita tried to reassure them it was no big deal, but as she turned, she accidentally bumped him plot armor. Gojo's soul nearly left his body as chaos erupted in his mind. Thankfully, the girls realized they were running late for class, and Kita waved him off with a smile. Gojo was genuinely happy. She still treated him the same way in school, until he overheard some classmates whispering, wondering if someone like Kita would ever go for a guy like him. Later in class, Kita rushed over to talk to Gojo, but he blurted out some random excuse, just to play with his joystick in bathroom, just like you guys. The rest of the day, Kita kept trying to talk to him, but he kept dodging her like a ninja until school ended, leaving her looking kinda bummed. Just as Gojo was about to head out, Kita finally caught up and asked if he'd come with her to pick out fabric for the costume. But when everyone turned to look at him like he just committed a crime against public bathrooms, he panicked and said no, before sprinting away. He found a spot behind a fence to hide and muttered an apology for ghosting her, only to realize Kita was literally right beside him. She told him to stop running off like a weirdo. When she asked why he was avoiding her, Gojo said they should talk privately so people wouldn't assume they knew each other. But Kita just stared at him like he was broken, and reminded him they were already friends. That made Gojo freeze. He nervously brought up the dating rumors floating around school, but Kita didn't care at all. In fact, she found it hilarious and teased him about it. Then she grabbed his hand and dragged him along to the fabric store. At the cosplay shop, Gojo showed her a detailed multi-view sketch of Shizuku's outfit. Kita was shocked. He put in that much effort. They decided what pieces they'd buy and what they'd make from scratch. First up, material for the dress. Kita picked out a shiny black fabric, but Gojo explained that Shizuku gave off high-end energy, so the dress should be thicker and heavier. But after checking the price tag, Gojo realized he didn't bring any money. He awkwardly apologized, but Kita pulled out a fat envelope of cash and told him to go wild. He hesitated, but she suggests they head to the medical store. But Gojo panicked and heads to the next stop. Was basically heaven for anyone who avoids real hair, a wig shop bursting with every color imaginable. Gojo was honestly blown away. The variety was insane, and the colors looked so good that he actually blushed a little just looking at them. Kita called him over to the section with black wigs since Shizuku had jet black hair, but Gojo, thinking like a designer, suggested they go with a deep purple shade since the character's theme color was purple. Kita stared at him in shock, realizing he knew way more about this than she did. He added that they'd need a long wig to match Shizuku's uneven hairstyle. Hearing this, Kita admitted she always ends up choosing the wrong stuff whenever she shops alone, and she was genuinely glad Gojo came with her. That comment hit him hard. He felt kind of honored to be helpful to a real-life girl for once. After they nailed the wig shopping, Kita told him there was one last place to visit. To Gojo's horror, they walked straight into a lingerie store, the land of garters and stockings. He immediately panicked, thinking he'd be arrested just for standing there. But Kita calmly told him couples shop there all the time. Then, without a care in the world, she pulled her skirt up slightly to show off a garter. "Wow, pretty," Gojo mumbled, barely hanging on to his sanity. He begged her to stop before his brain short-circuited, but Kita just laughed and kept teasing until he was on the verge of emotional collapse. Later, they stepped out of a restaurant, walking past a bitter older woman who looked at them with envy. Gojo was still mentally spiraling, thinking about the spicy cutscenes from Kita's game. His muttering about the game and that scene made everyone in line go pale. Modern youth was truly terrifying. As they walked, Gojo offered to take all the fabric home and start working on the pattern designs. He asked if there were any actual events where people wore these outfits. Kita lit up and explained about cosplay conventions where people dress up and get their photos taken. She also showed him pics from social media, including one girl who cosplays super risque characters but never shows up to real events. Gojo couldn't help thinking she might have some unresolved family drama, but Kita was too busy fangirling over the girl's latest upload. While flipping through pics, Kita asked if Gojo didn't think real girls were worth using that word for. Gojo explained that being an only child, he'd never felt connected to people much, but the first time he saw a Hina doll, it was so beautiful, it moved him. Since then, he only used that word for things that truly mattered to him. Kita pointed out that since Hina dolls are all about perfect faces, he must be into looks. Gojo didn't deny it, pretty was pretty. She agreed, saying it's totally valid to have standards you're not willing to compromise on. Just then, Kita's eyes locked onto something that made her lose all control: grilled meat wrapped on skewers. She practically sold her soul to get a bite. A few minutes later, Kita held up a massive skewer of grilled meat and started chomping away, clearly enjoying every bite. Gojo politely declined when she offered him some, which reminded him he still owed her for the ramen. As he reached into his pocket to pull out some cash, Kita stopped him and said this meal was totally on her. When Gojo tried to argue, she smiled and explained that it genuinely meant a lot to her. Not many people ever play the games she recommends, and the fact that Gojo not only played it but also recreated the outfit in such detail blew her mind. She just wanted to say thanks. Gojo felt deeply moved, until she held out the half-eaten skewer she'd been munching on and asked if he wanted a bite. He immediately declined, realizing it'd basically be a second-hand kiss. Suddenly, Kita turned to him and asked if she looked like she was overeating. Judging by the expression on Gojo's face, she got her answer. Embarrassed, she quickly defended her love for food, swearing up and down that she'd still fit into the outfit just fine. Trying to switch gears, Gojo asked when the cosplay event was, and she replied that the next one was in 2 weeks. That's when reality hit. She checked the time, realized she was about to miss her train, and took off running. Gojo was left standing there, freaking out about how tight the schedule was. On the ride home, his brain wouldn't stop spinning: 2 weeks to finish an entire outfit. It felt impossible, but he couldn't stop thinking about how excited Kita would be to wear it. He had to try. Back home, Kaoru noticed Gojo was out later than usual. When Gojo apologized, saying he lost track of time shopping with a friend, Kaoru was just happy he had a friend in the first place. But the moment he spotted a pair of stockings in the shopping bag, the shock hit him so hard he literally collapsed. Later at the hospital, Miori, Gojo's cousin, rushed in, looking worried. Gojo quickly reassured her that Kaoru didn't hurt anything seriously. After getting checked out, Kaoru was cleared to leave. Miori offered to let him stay at her place and rest for a few days, and Gojo agreed. That sounded like a good plan. He promised to drop off some clothes the next day, though Kaoru seemed way more stressed about leaving his precious painting brushes behind. During the car ride back to Miori's house, Gojo stared blankly out the window, the weight of the 2-week deadline hanging heavy on his shoulders. 2 days later, Kita found out why Gojo had been missing from school, but when she saw how tired and stressed he looked, she gently told him to reach out if he ever needed anything. Gojo thanked her with a small smile and assured her that he'd manage. Still, Kita suggested they exchange phone numbers just in case. As they headed back to class, Gojo suddenly realized he hadn't touched the cosplay dress in 2 whole days. Panic started creeping in. Things got worse when Kita casually reminded him that midterms were just around the corner. Gojo froze. With exams coming, caring for Kaoru, and trying to keep the dress on track, he had no clue how he'd balance everything. When Kita asked if he was alright, Gojo gave a weak yeah, but inside, he knew he was drowning. That evening, he got a call from someone who wanted a tour of the Hina doll workshop. It was their only chance to visit, so Gojo agreed, even though it meant giving up more of his time. After hanging up, he crouched to the floor, overwhelmed. He had no idea how to keep all the pieces of his life together. That entire week became a blur, bouncing between hospital visits to check on Kaoru, running tours at the shop, and desperately trying to sew whenever he could. Kita noticed how serious and distant Gojo had become, but she didn't get a chance to talk to him before he disappeared after class. That night, she showed up at his house, but it looked totally deserted. Assuming he was at Miori's place helping out, she left quietly, hoping he was doing okay. Inside, though, things were falling apart. The house was a disaster zone, and Gojo lay face down on the floor, feeling like he might throw up. He hadn't slept properly in days, and the dress still wasn't done. His mind flashed back to a time he asked Kaoru why he brought his paintbrushes everywhere. Kaoru had said that even one day without them made his hands feel stiff. Meanwhile, Gojo couldn't even remember the last time he picked up a brush. That thought crushed him. What if he wasn't cut out to make Hina dolls like his grandpa? And the dress, still nowhere near done. That only brought up more painful memories, especially of the girl from his past, who told him she hated him and left him emotionally wrecked. He started crying out of sheer frustration, but then he remembered asking Kaoru once how he never got tired of crafting dolls, even after doing it daily. His grandpa had said that when you love something, you push through the rough parts. He'd even shown Gojo an album filled with happy customers, smiling in their custom pieces, a reminder of why the work mattered. Thinking about how excited Kita would be to wear the finished dress, Gojo wiped his tears, tied on a bandana, and got back to it. The day before the event, Kita couldn't believe her eyes when she saw the finished cosplay. Gojo told her it was ready, and now she could attend whatever event she liked. But she shook her head and told him she hadn't even picked an event yet, she was waiting for the dress to be done first. Gojo let out a breath of relief, realizing he hadn't ruined any plans. But then Kita's eyes welled up with tears. She apologized, saying she had no idea how much he was going through. Gojo admitted he was also at fault for pushing forward without telling her anything. As her tears rolled down, Gojo suggested she try on the dress so he could see how it all came together and make final tweaks if needed. Kita tried to point out how exhausted he looked, but Gojo just smiled and said that seeing her happy in the outfit was all he needed. Her mood lifted, and she promised to rock that dress like her life depended on it. Gojo helped brush back her hair and prep it for the wig. They discussed Shizuku's makeup style and figured out what look would match best. When Gojo said he already had some fake lashes, Kita raised an eyebrow and asked if they belonged to a secret girlfriend, or some alternate version of him stashed in the closet. Gojo quickly explained that they were for the Hina dolls, who, despite being silent and still, were surprisingly high maintenance. Gojo started geeking out over his passion for Hina dolls, explaining how pros like his grandpa Kaoru could identify who made a doll just by looking at the eyebrows. He shared how he hoped to one day reach that level to create dolls with the same skill and soul his grandpa had. Hearing that, Kita looked at him with admiration and confidently said, "If anyone can do it, it's you." That made Gojo smile, and the look on his face practically made her heart skip a beat. After that sweet moment, they got back to doing Shizuku's makeup. Then Kita slipped out of her clothes to change into the full cosplay. When she called Gojo back in, he walked in and froze. It was like his dream character had just stepped into real life. Stunned, he told her she looked exactly like Shizuku, and Kita lit up, thanking him for making it all happen. Gojo asked how the costume felt to wear. She moved around a bit and said raising her arms was tough, which made Gojo realize he hadn't designed the outfit with mobility in mind. Then, without shame, Kita playfully grabbed her chest and laughed, amazed at how well Gojo had nailed the shape and fit. She also noticed the dress was just short enough to flash a peek of her underwear, which made Gojo silently proud of his attention to detail. Maybe his inner degenerate was turning into a useful talent. Kita squealed with joy and begged him to take pictures. He agreed and snapped a few shots, but pointed out that they all just looked like Kita dressed up. Since she was cosplaying, he told her she needed to pose like Shizuku would. She agreed and chose a neutral gray background. Trying to channel Shizuku's cold and mysterious vibe, she struck a serious pose but couldn't help cracking a smile, thinking about how happy she was. After a few more tries, she finally nailed the look. Gojo praised her, and they kept going until they had the perfect shots. When she reviewed them, she was thrilled with how they turned out. She even made a new cosplay account just to post them online. Right then, Kita realized she actually wanted to attend the cosplay event after all, and with no hesitation, she asked Gojo to come along with her. The next day, Gojo and Kita arrived at the cosplay event. The second she stepped out, her eyes lit up like a kid in a candy store surrounded by pro-level cosplayers everywhere. She turned to Gojo and thanked him again for making her dream debut a reality. But Gojo wasn't really listening, he was spiraling. When Kita noticed his blank expression, she asked what was wrong. He awkwardly explained that he felt completely out of place, being surrounded by what felt like an ocean of estrogen. Everyone seemed to be staring. Kita laughed it off, saying they were probably looking at her bold outfit, but Gojo insisted it was him, standing there in regular clothes. In response, Kita jokingly gave her chest a wiggle and told him to relax. Feeling slightly more at ease, they made their way to the main plaza. There, a very sweaty guy with a camera approached and asked if she was cosplaying Shizuku. That instantly got Kita hyped. He asked if he could take a few shots, and she happily agreed. Gojo stepped aside while she switched into character mode, striking pose after pose like she'd been doing this forever. After checking out the pictures, Kita asked to take a few together with the fanboy. The poor guy turned as red as a tomato just standing next to her, clearly overwhelmed. Still, he managed a thank you after the shoot. Soon, more people noticed her, and it wasn't long before a line of photographers had formed. While watching the crowd, Gojo spotted a cosplayer dressed as a dragon girl twist on a male character, and it hit him everyone was just out there being who they wanted to be. That made him smile. When he looked back and saw Kita laughing and posing, he felt proud he'd actually helped her reach this moment. But then, a sad thought crept in. Now that his promise was fulfilled, would this be it? Would he stop getting to spend time with her? He realized how much this journey meant, hanging out after class, having a girl in his room for the first time, learning so many new things. These were all firsts, and he was genuinely thankful it happened. At that moment, Kita looked over and gave him the kind of smile only she could pull off. Then she jogged up to him, clearly happy he hadn't disappeared again. She leaned in and whispered that her outfit was falling apart. Gojo, concerned, asked what was wrong. Kita explained that after looking through the photos from yesterday, she realized Shizuku had a bit more going on up top, so she layered 2 bras to match the character's look, and now her chest was basically exploding. Plus, the fabric was super thick, and she felt like she was melting inside. Gojo immediately blamed himself for choosing such a heavy material. To cool down, they moved indoors and stopped at a staircase. Kita, panting, said she couldn't make it to the dressing room. Gojo handed her a cooling patch and a towel to help out. She took off her tie, the only thing keeping Gojo's sanity together, and he tried to focus while she wiped down her sweat. When he looked up tips on how to avoid heat stroke, the search results basically told her to undress. Before he could react, Kita casually asked him to unzip her dress just a little. Gojo panicked, but realized she was genuinely struggling, so he pulled himself together and unzipped the back carefully. The relieved noise she made afterward sent his face into full crimson mode. Then she asked him to wipe her back, and he did, all while begging her to keep the volume down so they wouldn't attract attention. She even lifted her shorts a bit to cool down her legs, assuring him she was wearing safety shorts underneath. Gojo promised to tweak the outfit design later to be more heat-friendly. With that sorted, Kita said she wanted to swing back to the plaza one last time. Once there, she spotted the photographer she'd bailed on earlier. She ran up to her, apologized for disappearing, and offered to do one final photo shoot before heading out. The woman happily agreed and led her to a shaded spot. She asked Kita to look directly into the camera, but just as she was about to click the shutter, a gust of wind flipped Kita's skirt. The photographer panicked and promised to delete the pic, but Kita was more concerned about one thing. Wait, was I even looking at the lens? On the train ride back, Kita thanked Gojo again for making everything happen. Gojo replied that he was grateful too, the whole experience meant a lot. But as the excitement faded, he started to look down, thinking this might be the end of their time together. Sensing the shift, Kita asked what she should cosplay next. Gojo looked surprised, assuming Shizuku was a one-time thing, but Kita casually revealed she had dozens of characters she wanted to try. As she started naming them, Gojo's mood lifted. She caught his smile and teased him about it. He admitted he was excited to keep working with her. Kita laughed and said she'd even get him a dress mannequin. But when she turned to show him something, she saw Gojo barely staying awake. She smiled and told him to take a nap. As she rambled softly about how fun the day had been, Gojo, half asleep, whispered that she looked beautiful. Her eyes widened. She remembered him saying he only used that word when something truly mattered. Blushing, she turned and saw him completely passed out. Later, they returned to Gojo's place. Kita offered to wash the wig, so Gojo read the instructions while she followed along. She found it surprisingly easy, but when she turned to say so, she caught herself staring at him like a total simp. Meanwhile, Miori drove Kaoru home, joking about the stalking incident. She said it was normal for teen boys to panic when they run out of socks. When they walked in, Kaoru saw Gojo holding a dress beside Kita and screamed. Later, Kaoru apologized for overreacting. Gojo promised nothing weird happened. Kaoru believed him and praised the dress, though Gojo said he still had room to grow. As the two examined it, Kita watched them, heart pounding. That's when she realized she had totally fallen for Gojo. Seeing him bond with his grandpa made her chest feel funny until her stomach betrayed her with a loud growl. Gojo asked if she was hungry. Kaoru smiled and invited her to stay for dinner. That night, Kita demolished Gojo's cooking. She praised him for being skilled in the kitchen. He explained he learned after his parents passed. Kita shared that her mom had passed too, and her dad worked far away, so she lived on her own. Kaoru asked if she was eating properly. Kita pulled out a photo of her massive sausage haul. Gojo looked traumatized. Kaoru, half joking, warned her about heart problems. Kita said she drinks milk and yogurt to stay balanced, but Kaoru insisted she should join them for dinner more often. Afterward, Gojo walked Kita to the station and apologized for keeping her out so late. She told him not to worry, she had a great time. When they arrived, Kita hesitated a bit before nervously asking if she'd see him again tomorrow. Gojo said yes with a small smile, and she waved goodbye before running to catch her train. On board, Kita sat quietly, confused about why she felt so off. She remembered Gojo saying they hadn't done anything weird and started wondering what might have happened if they had. The next day, the weather took a turn. Heavy rain poured down as a girl sprinted toward Kaoru's shop. Seeing her soaked outside, Kaoru assumed she must be one of Gojo's friends and welcomed her inside. Later that afternoon, when Gojo got home from school, Kaoru mentioned he had to step out and casually told him someone was waiting inside. As Kaoru left, Gojo froze. He only had one friend and she was at work, who had Kaoru let into the house. Worried it could be a break-in, Gojo ran toward the bathroom. But when he opened the door, he was met with the sight of a short girl with zero clothes on. She slipped on some water and tumbled, flashing Gojo in the process, giving him his first glimpse of forbidden treasure. Beautiful. Unfortunately, the chaos triggered a strange memory. He recalled asking Kaoru once why one of his dolls didn't have hair. Kaoru had explained that the heads were finished separately from the wigs, which weirdly matched the smoothness he just saw. Once things calmed down, Gojo apologized to the mystery girl and asked what brought her there. She asked if he was the guy who made the outfits. He assumed she must be a Hina doll fan that Kaoru thought was one of his friends. He quickly grabbed a notebook and asked for her name and school. She introduced herself as Juju, Hoo, and Gojo was stunned to learn she was actually older than him. He offered to show her some completed pieces, which made her excited. But that excitement didn't last. Gojo brought her into the display room, filled with beautifully dressed Hina dolls. He was pumped to share his passion, but Juju wasn't impressed. While Gojo assumed he'd found another doll enthusiast, she was clearly thinking, why am I surrounded by antique dolls? Still, after looking around, she admitted the craftsmanship was great and the clothes were stunning. Then she snapped and asked why she was being shown dolls in the first place. Gojo reminded her that this was, after all, a Hina doll shop. That's when Juju whipped out her phone and showed him a photo of Kita, explaining that she wanted to order a cosplay outfit like hers. Gojo was surprised, but quickly explained that he didn't take commissions. The outfits were personal projects, not for sale. But Juju wasn't backing down. She leaned in and, with zero hesitation, dropped the ultimate threat. If he didn't agree to make her costume, she'd accuse him of being a pervert, especially after the bathroom incident. Suddenly, Gojo's brain clicked. This girl wasn't just any cosplayer. She was the amazing Juju, the one Kita had hyped up. Realizing the pieces all added up, he quickly apologized for assuming she was still in middle school just because of her height. He then asked how she even found out where he lived. Juju casually explained she'd seen Kita's event post and showed up just to check out the cosplay in person. After tailing them around all day and noticing Gojo was behind the outfit, she decided to follow him home. Naturally. Not long after, Kita showed up too starstruck to see her cosplay idol right in front of her. She instantly forgot about boundaries and rushed in with non-stop compliments, calling her adorable and throwing a million questions her way. After Gojo managed to calm things down, Juju got to the point she wanted him to make a Shion costume from her favorite anime. Kita's eyes sparkled with excitement, and she jumped in to explain the show and the character with full energy. As Kita described all the details, Juju was surprised that she actually knew what she was talking about, not just another airhead. Gojo added that Kita was a huge fan of Shion and even had her all over her bag. When asked why she didn't cosplay the character herself, Kita admitted she didn't feel physically right for the role and didn't want to ruin the image of a character she loved so much. That response hit Juju in the heart. She smiled and told Kita she was the exact kind of cosplayer she respected, someone who cared. She even asked for forgiveness for judging too quickly. As things wrapped up, Juju got ready to leave and asked Gojo for his contact info so she could share the outfit reference and measurements. Before heading out, she casually said, "Don't get the wrong idea," and when they asked what she meant, she said it was obvious the two of them were dating. Gojo nearly exploded, trying to clear that up, and bolted out of the room. Confused, Juju looked over and saw Kita floating in happiness, realizing he didn't have a girlfriend after all. Snapping out of her daze, Kita asked if Juju wanted to cosplay with her sometime, only to be met with an instant nope. Gojo returned to find Kita still trying to convince Juju to do a group shoot, but Juju explained that she preferred solo cosplays and had already planned to rent a studio. When Kita imagined how cute she'd look in the shoot, she begged to tag along. Juju kept saying no until Kita offered to split the cost of the rental. Gojo added that he'd be there too, to help with makeup and touch-ups. At that, Juju realized she could save money and spend it on better costume pieces. That changed everything. Just when Kita was about to give up, Juju agreed. Kita cheered, and Gojo offered to watch the anime to better understand the character. Juju asked why references weren't enough, and Gojo explained that he liked knowing the character to capture the details right, just like he watched Kita's spicy game footage for the Shizuku dress. He pulled out his phone to find where to stream it, but Kita said she had the complete box set and could lend it to him. Gojo smiled until she casually mentioned it had more episodes than One Piece. The next morning, Gojo told Kaoru that he was heading over to Kita's place. Kaoru told him not to worry about the shop, and then turned his attention to a doll head Gojo had recently painted. Nervous, Gojo assumed it wasn't great since he hadn't practiced in a while, but to his surprise, Kaoru complimented the improvement. He explained that Gojo's painting used to be a little stiff, but now his lines were smoother and more natural. He figured spending time with Kita, especially doing her makeup, had helped him loosen up. He also reminded Gojo not to get tunnel vision to be a great doll maker. He'd need more than just technical skill. Later that day, Gojo showed up at Kita's apartment. After ringing the bell several times with no response, he started to wonder if he was just too early. Suddenly, Kita rushed to the door in her sleepwear, apologizing for oversleeping. But Gojo's brain short-circuited. All he could focus on was the part of her body that he'd never stop mentally measuring. Noticing his expression, Kita caught a glimpse of herself in the mirror and gasped in horror. She hadn't put her contacts in. She quickly shut the door to fix herself before letting Gojo in. Once she finally opened the door again, he handed her a bag of pudding, a casual gift. Kita, still flustered about him seeing her so up close without her contacts, didn't realize Gojo was frozen at the door. He'd never been to a friend's house, let alone a girl's, and now his head was spinning. He considered just grabbing the DVDs and heading out, but Kita invited him in to watch a few episodes with her. No way he was turning that down. When she led him to her room, he felt instantly more relaxed. It was basically a Shizuku shrine. As the anime played, Gojo began taking notes to better understand the character he'd be designing for. Meanwhile, Kita was completely absorbed in the show, fangirling hard. Then it hit her, this felt a lot like a casual home date. With Kaoru not around, they were alone, and it was different. She looked over at Gojo, and the way he was so focused made her heart flutter. That soft, quiet guy energy? Yeah, it was getting to her. She realized she was deeply, helplessly into him. Trying to play it cool, she focused on the show until her stomach betrayed her again with a loud growl. Gojo offered to go out and buy food, but Kita insisted on cooking this time. Gojo was curious until he remembered her sausage stuffing superpower. He offered to cook instead, but she was determined to handle it. Throwing on her apron, Kita suddenly realized she wasn't wearing a bra but brushed it off, thinking Gojo probably hadn't noticed. She checked the fridge and decided to make omuris, the kind with extra love sprinkled in. She prepped her ingredients and chopped onions like a pro, then fried up the rice and felt proud of how amazing it smelled. But when she finally plated it up, the dish looked like it had been dropped and stepped on. Embarrassed, Kita tried to explain what went wrong and said he didn't have to eat it. But Gojo gave it a try and was genuinely shocked. Despite the looks, the taste was amazing. Kita asked if Gojo was just trying to be nice about the food, but he assured her he meant it. It was actually delicious. That little boost in confidence lit her up. After that, they kept watching the anime together, until Gojo got so emotionally invested he teared up. Trying not to laugh, Kita handed him some tissues. Later, after heading home, Gojo jumped on a call with Juju to show her the costume sketches. She was impressed by how much detail he packed in. She offered to send the money for the fabric, but decided to wait until Gojo had a proper budget written out. When he asked about hair and makeup, Juju said she'd take care of that herself. Curious, Gojo asked how she managed to make her eyelids look different in certain photos. Juju switched to video, held up a piece of tape, and explained how she used it to adjust her eye shape. That's when it hit Gojo. They could have made Kita's cosplay even more accurate if they had known this trick earlier. Juju was surprised that he didn't already know about this stuff. Gojo admitted that this was his first time doing cosplay design. She was shocked. The quality of Kita's dress didn't look like beginner work. Then she mentioned that Kita's cosplay photos were taken with a phone, and suggested using a proper camera for future shoots. She explained her younger sister, Shinju, was behind all her pictures, and suggested Gojo and Kita invest in a camera too. When Gojo asked if Shinju could show him how to use one, Juju invited him to meet up at a family restaurant near her place. Gojo agreed and thanked her before ending the call. Excited, he texted Kita the news. She called him back right away, insisting on coming too so she could learn photography. As she imagined what Juju's younger sister looked like, she pictured someone super tiny and cute. But when they arrived at the restaurant, there was someone beside Juju who didn't match that image at all. Gojo was caught off guard by how mature Shinju looked, especially in the chest department. When Kita asked for her height, it became clear Gojo's thoughts had taken a detour. After looking through the photos Shinju had taken, Kita complimented her skills. Juju proudly added that Shinju had set up her cosplay account and name. Shinju explained that she just wanted others to see how cute her sister was, and the account ended up blowing up. But since she didn't know how to deal with all the comments, she just ignored them. Juju said she didn't care what people thought online, but Shinju admitted that having fans made her feel good. Kita smiled, saying it was obvious how much she loved her sister. When Shinju confirmed it, Juju blushed and looked away. Then Shinju pulled out their dad's professional DSLR camera and said photography was his hobby. Gojo asked what made it better than a phone. She explained that DSLRs have much higher image quality and offer more control over background. Seeing how passionate Shinju was, Kita asked if she'd ever try cosplay herself. Shinju hesitated, but when Juju chimed in, she admitted she only liked taking pictures, not dressing up. After testing the camera herself, Kita was blown away by the difference and said she wanted one too. Gojo looked up the price and nearly fainted, especially when he realized lenses were sold separately. Juju said the cost only went up with accessories, and Gojo gave up on the dream right there. He wondered how all those event photographers could afford such gear. Kita joked that they'd have to stick to phones until she could sell a kidney. Juju reminded them to stay realistic with their budget. Before parting, Juju invited them to look at some studio options and suggested they meet at the train station over the weekend. The day finally came, and they arrived at the studio, an old, abandoned hospital-turned-photography location. Kita and Shinju were buzzing with excitement, racing into the building to explore. Behind them, Juju sighed, silently questioning how her life led her to this haunted-looking setup. At the entrance, Gojo commented that the gloomy vibe was perfect for recreating scenes from the anime. Juju agreed but also admitted it was slightly disturbing that he'd actually watched the whole series. Before long, Kita and Shinju called them in. As Gojo moved to join them, he noticed Juju had stopped at the doorway, frozen. When he asked if she was uncomfortable, she denied it and stormed in to prove she wasn't scared. Upstairs, Kita asked if the halls were too dim, but Shinju said the flash would fix it. She excitedly explained how to adjust lighting, and Kita joined in, thrilled to learn new photography tricks. When they noticed the sky turning gray, they decided to wrap things up quickly. As the rain started falling, Gojo found Juju crouched in a corner. He asked if she wanted to head back, but she insisted on staying. Seeing her push herself made Gojo curious. Why was she trying so hard? She looked at him and asked if he had a dream for the future. Gojo replied that he wanted to become a Hina doll artisan. Juju smiled softly and told him not to give up. Then her expression changed as she shared her childhood dream, becoming a magical girl. She had been obsessed when she was younger, but reality crushed her when she realized it wasn't possible. Then one day, she discovered cosplay, and though her first attempt was a disaster, it brought her joy. From that moment, she decided to chase her dream in her own way. Gojo asked why she wanted him to make her costume. Juju blushed and admitted she'd felt jealous seeing Kita's cosplay photos. The outfit had caught her heart at first glance, and she knew she had to wear something made by the same person. That comment hit Gojo hard. He was suddenly reminded of the first time he saw his grandpa's Hina dolls and called them the most beautiful things he'd ever seen. Back then, Kaoru told him they were designed to make people fall in love at first sight, and that's what inspired Gojo to pursue doll making. Now, standing in that studio, Gojo started tearing up. Juju panicked a little, but he grabbed her hand and thanked her, promising to give it his all. Unfortunately, Juju wasn't used to boys. She attended an all-girls school, and that one bit of contact made her faint on the spot. Days later, after finals wrapped up, Kita invited Gojo to the beach. He was shocked to find himself actually there. Thinking it was for a cosplay shoot, he asked what they were doing. Kita just said it was summer, and they were done with exams. That was reason enough. While munching on a burger, she asked him to feed her some fries. Before he could grab them, a bird swooped down and stole her burger. They tried moving spots, but the bird kept following. Gojo quickly tossed some fries to distract it while they escaped with the last burger. Later, they sat near the ocean and split Gojo's sandwich. After relaxing a bit, Kita ran toward the waves to soak her feet, flashing her short skirt in the process. Embarrassed, Gojo looked away, but she called him over to join her. He clumsily took off his shoes, rolled up his pants, and waded into the water. Startled by how the sand moved under him, he freaked out. Kita laughed and asked if it was his first time at the beach. He admitted it was. He'd always been busy with Hina dolls growing up and never did things like this. Looking around, Gojo said the view was beautiful, and now he understood what his grandpa meant about needing life experience to become a great artist. Kita, touched by his words, said she wanted to take him everywhere, just the two of them. Gojo immediately agreed. Flustered, Kita said she needed a drink and ran off, realizing she'd just suggested more alone time. When she looked back and saw Gojo staring peacefully at the waves, she smiled and took a quick photo of him before he tripped and face planted into the water. Later that week, they met in Gojo's room to check out some new materials. Out of nowhere, Kita lifted her skirt, making Gojo panic, but she was just wearing a swimsuit. She reminded him that she had sent a pic last time and never got a reply. What she didn't know was that Gojo had needed many tissues afterward. As she kept showing off, Gojo begged for a minute alone, clearly overwhelmed. Kita tried teasing him, but he warned her not to push him or he'd short-circuit. After the chaos, they sat down to paint a black gem for one of the costumes. Kita said she was happy to be helpful, which reminded Gojo of the first time he ever felt useful to someone. Then Kita got way too excited about trying the new outfit on and started undressing, causing Gojo to cover his eyes and scream internally. Right then, Kita realizes she's rocking the wrong bra, just as her brain finally snaps back and she quickly covers up. A bit later, Juju tries on her outfit and tells Gojo it looks incredible. Gojo asks if there's anything she'd change, and she says the skirt needs more puff, maybe a petticoat could fix that. Then she slips on the cape and is blown away by the fancy lining, Gojo added. He warns it's a bit heavy, but Juju says that's actually great for the camera. Meanwhile, Kita wishes she understood cosplay stuff better and tries to give Gojo some feedback, but all she manages are random, "This is wild" comments. Gojo offers to help with her makeup and wig styling. Juju joins in, giving tips to help match the character more. Gojo grabs tape and starts teaching how to lift the eyelids. Kita's pumped to try it, and Juju helps line it up perfectly. Once done, Kita checks the mirror and laughs about looking like an imposter, but then playfully punches Gojo out of excitement and gets super hyped for the shoot. But suddenly, it starts pouring, and the rainy weather kills her mood. Juju, though, says the gloomy vibe is perfect for the theme. She praises Kita's look, and Kita starts fan-raving over how much she loves both characters. She asks for a selfie, and Juju agrees this time, so Kita posts it to Twitter. Then they realize Gojo and Shinju are still gone. When the door finally opens, Kita and Juju freeze at what they see. Turns out, after Juju fainted the day before, they all went back early. Gojo apologizes for not realizing sooner, but Juju says she's okay now. Kita says she has other plans and heads out first, leaving Gojo with the sisters. Shinju says she wants to explore the station shops, so Juju goes with her, leaving Gojo alone with Shinju. That's when Gojo gently asks if she's ever wanted to cosplay too, but just couldn't say it in front of her sister. She looks down, and as Gojo starts to leave, she stops him and says there's one character she dreams of doing, a tiny, cute sister type. She's scared she'll look weird doing it, and that Juju might not be cool with it. Gojo tells her that cosplay lets anyone become whoever they want, and promises to help. He also says Juju wouldn't judge. Shinju smiles and asks for help cosplaying someone from the same anime as Kita and Juju. Gojo guesses it's the red-haired girl, but she says it's actually one of the male characters. Gojo doesn't flinch and listens without judgment. They agree to sneak her into the photo shoot. Shinju mentions she struggles with clothes because of her bust, and also doesn't have much money since she lives on an allowance. Gojo knows cosplay isn't cheap, but he's determined to make it happen. They go back to his place, and he pulls out his school uniform, which looks like the one from the anime. Shinju asks to try it, and Gojo waits outside, daydreaming about Kita wearing his clothes instead. When he comes back, one button's barely holding on, and another one flies off like a missile. Gojo fixes it and shows her how they can tweak the sleeves. The only thing left is figuring out how to make her look more like a guy. Hina dolls never have this issue since they wear kimonos, but then Gojo gets an idioto wrap her chest. While waiting outside again, he remembers how Kita wore 2 bras just to make her chest pop, and it hits him how committed the girls are to looking just like their favorite characters. Gojo steps back into the room to check on Shinju, but she's frustrated that her chest still won't stay hidden. He also notices her figure is softer than the athletic shape of the character she's going for. So, he searches online and finds a post suggesting a chest binder. They check it out and are surprised it fits her size perfectly and is so cheap it feels unreal. Problem solved. Later, Gojo begins measuring her, but when he reaches for her head, her chest gets in the way. Days after, they meet to trim her wig. Shinju's amazed at how calm he looks. But when he admits he's nervous too, she feels a little less alone. Gojo then shares that someone he admires also has limits, just like them. Gojo suddenly zones out after calling Shinju cute, but quickly snaps back and says, everyone's got stuff they deal with, even if they don't show it. That sticks in Shinju's mind as they move on to hair and makeup, finally turning her into the character she loves. When Kita and Juju see her, they go off about how awesome she looks. Shinju lights up hearing her sister's praise. After the hype, the girls snap a group selfie, marking Shinju's first cosplay ever. Then she starts taking non-stop pics of them. She even suggests recreating a classic pose from the anime. Juju, though, is too creeped out by the abandoned building. But when she sees Kita acting totally in character, almost scary, she blushes because of how cute Juju looks up close. Kita bursts out laughing, loving the moment. Even though Juju knows she's kinda messing up the shoot, she can't help but feel happy. After all that chaos, she walks over to Gojo and thanks him for everything he did for Shinju. She figures he probably paid for some stuff and says she'll pay him back. Then she quietly admits that she had no idea Shinju even wanted to cosplay and feels like she failed as a big sister. But Gojo tells her it's not easy sharing what you love sometimes. That makes Juju admire Gojo even more, though she keeps those feelings inside. Meanwhile, Kita strikes more poses, and Shinju catches a perfect shot of her. But sadly, her camera couldn't handle it and breaks. Later, Kita and Shinju go over the photos and are impressed with how well she pulled it off. Then Juju realizes her love for Gojo's costume work wasn't the only feeling going on. After Shinju notices Juju's reaction, she asks if it looked weird. Juju says she was jealous since it's a role she could never play. Shinju reminds her that she looks great in every cosplay, but Juju explains she always picks characters she knows she can pull off. Even though she's okay with how she looks, she sometimes wonders what it's like to cosplay someone totally different. That's when Shinju remembers Gojo's advice. She tells Juju she's planning to get a job and save up to keep cosplaying. Juju beams, and says she's excited because her favorite shoots are the ones with just Shinju. Shinju smiles, saying she loved doing the group cosplay too, while Juju quietly stares at a photo of Gojo and mutters, "Guess what guys, it wasn't too bad." While Gojo's looking through the photos, Kita calls him up, all excited about how they turned out. She compliments his skills with guy-style makeup and asks if Shinju actually wore his school uniform. When he says yes, she's stunned and wants to know how they pulled it off so fast. Gojo casually explains that Shinju had come over and they worked on it together. That's when Kita goes silent, completely shocked that he was alone with a well-endowed girl. To punish him, she gives him the cold shoulder. Not long after, summer break kicks off, and Gojo's pumped to work on both his Hina dolls and Kita's new cosplay. This time, she picked a wild character named Veronica's barely wearing anything. They'd watched the anime together, but Gojo hadn't caught on to the obvious problem. He was more focused on how to replicate her deep skin tone. Now, in the present, Gojo's relieved that the costume was way easier than the others. Suddenly, Kita arrives, and Gojo rushes to meet her, surprised at how tan and sweaty she looks. When he asks, she explains that she had to apply full-body foundation. She then asks if she can shower since she's dripping. Gojo waits outside, offering her a fresh set of clothes his own. Afterward, Kita relaxes with a cold drink, feeling refreshed, while Gojo can't stop thinking about how she's now wearing his shirt and smells like his soap. His brain starts acting up again, and she notices his red face. She laughs it off and shows him the foundation and mascara she's using, plus some heavy chains that give off intense vibe. Gojo spots something else in her bag, so she shows him the wallpaper she bought to switch photo backgrounds. He hands her the custom teeth he made from fake nails, and she eagerly pops them in. When she grins, Gojo is stunned by how real they look. Suddenly, Kita lifts her shirt to change, flashing him by accident. Gojo turns beet red, and Kita thinks he might have overheated. She panics, runs for water, and ends up slipping and bumping her head, meaning no cosplay for today. A few days later, Kita drags Gojo to shop for new clothes, but this time, for him. She asks what style he likes, but he's clueless. She hands him a shirt to try, and while she waits, one of the store workers sees her and wonders who her lucky man is. But when Gojo steps out, the guy silently hopes the dude's at least got something else going for him. While shopping, Kita keeps tossing new shirts at Gojo to try on, but she ends up loving him in literally everything, making it clear she had no clue what she was doing. In her mind, Gojo looked amazing in anything, even though he didn't like a single one. Eventually, she grabbed a basic tee and decided to try one too, hoping that if he liked it, she could match with the guy she had feelings for. Sadly, even though she looked stunning, Gojo wasn't into it at all. Afterward, they stopped for some ramen, then went back to hitting more stores. In the end, Gojo still couldn't find a single outfit he liked, but Kita didn't seem bothered. She brought up doing the Veronica cosplay again now that her bump had healed, but Gojo hesitated and suggested she do it solo. That threw Kita off, and she got quiet, wondering if he just didn't want to cosplay with her anymore. Gojo awkwardly explained that he literally wouldn't survive seeing her in that costume without combusting. Kita finally got what he meant and smacked him for scaring her, thinking it was something serious. She then promised to think more carefully when picking characters in the future and said she'd wear it at home, so his work wouldn't go to waste. They both stood there, red-faced and awkward, until Kita leaned in and teased if he wanted her to send him photos wearing the costume. Gojo nearly passed out, but she laughed and said she was kidding. Since the heat was getting wild, they decided to cool off at a manga cafe. While Kita chatted about how cool the coffee machines were, Gojo couldn't stop noticing how close they were sitting. He asked if the room size was normal, and she said, yep. Then she pulled out a menu, and Gojo was amazed at her appetite. Kita then whipped out a new manga featuring a succubus chasing after a guy. She said she adored characters with pigtails and wanted to cosplay her. Gojo thought, well, at least that's more clothes than Veronica, but Kita surprised him by saying she wasn't planning on doing it. He figured it was because of her earlier promise, but she admitted she didn't think she was cute enough to rock pigtails. Gojo was stunned by the nonsense and told her she'd look amazing. She finally smiled and agreed only because Gojo asked. Then Gojo casually asked what a succubus even was. Kita explained, saying they're female demons that give guys crazy dreams and drain generations of souls at once. Gojo looked horrified and asked if he'd be scarred for life. Kita laughed and said it's all pretty tame. She opened the manga and showed scenes where the succubus just wants the guy to nap, but ends up falling asleep herself. In another part, the boy gives her chocolates so he can keep working. That helped calm Gojo down. While Kita went to pick up their order, Gojo flipped through the manga, but realized the art style was too simple. He couldn't figure out the costume design. This was on a whole new level compared to past ones. On their way out, he asked if they could stop at a bookstore to look for better references. Along the way, he spotted a clothing store and finally found something he liked. Later at home, he showed Kaoru the new jinbite he picked up. A few days after, Gojo told Kita her outfit was ready. She told him she'd rented a nearby studio and asked him to meet her there. When they arrived, Gojo thought the place looked kind of sketchy, but Kita was already running inside. They checked in and went upstairs where Kita immediately started bouncing around like my girlfriend jumping last night. But when Kita notices a weird 2-in-1 vibrating massager, she finally admits this place is, in fact, a love hotel. Gojo immediately loses it and says she never told him that. Kita sheepishly explains that she saw a giant bed online like the one from the manga, and since the place was cheap, she booked it without thinking. She only realized what kind of place it was after arriving and casually says, oops, my bad. Still, she points out that the room fits the vibe she wanted. Gojo tries to convince himself it's just a photo spot until his eyes land on that same vibrating device, and he's suddenly more terrified than when they visited that creepy hospital. While Gojo's panicking, Kita casually mentions that lots of cosplayers book love hotels for photo shoots or girl hangouts. She even shows him a few pictures. When Gojo spots some fancy desserts in one of the shots, he wonders if this place also has them. Kita suggests they try ordering, but as she reaches for the phone, Gojo stops her and reminds her that students aren't supposed to hang around sketchy places like this. Kita agrees it wasn't her best idea but says they might as well make use of the money she spent and offers to get changed. When she checks out the massive bathtub, she jokingly asks if Gojo wants to hop in with her, nearly giving him a heart attack. While she changes, Gojo nervously flips through channels, hoping to calm down. But the loud moaning noises make him freeze. The curious part of his brain wants to study a little, but after a moment, he snaps out of it and turns the TV off. Just then, Kita walks out in full cosplay and calls Gojo a genius for adding cute details like the heart design on her collar. Gojo awkwardly explains he tried researching the succubus character, but after blowing through a tissue box, he realized the manga was actually pretty wholesome. He added stuff based on what he could remember, even if it wasn't accurate. Kita laughs and tells him cosplay doesn't have to be perfect. Freedom is part of the fun. She says his designs are always amazing, so whatever he creates is automatically right. Just as Gojo's about to thank her, she blurts out a random life tip, saying there's a rumor that keeping a rubber in your wallet brings good luck. She then runs around the room looking for one, and when she finds it, she hands it to Gojo saying, "Let's have a lucky moment together." Later, after a clapping session, Gojo helps her with her hair and makeup and says she's totally nailed the look. As he keeps staring, he whispers, "Beautiful," though it turns out he's talking about the wig. After that, he suggests some poses for her to do on the bed. She even acts out a scene where she eats chocolates, which she does happily for the shoot. Gojo then suggests they try a shot where the character sings her lullaby. Kita tries posing for it, but something feels off. He realizes the picture needs her looking straight into the camera like it's from the main character's view. So Gojo climbs onto the bed and tells Kita to get on top of him so he can get the right angle. Kita hesitates, worried she might crush him, but Gojo says it's fine. She gently gets on top, and he manages to snap the perfect photo. Kita is thrilled and says how much fun she's having. Gojo blushes and agrees, right before he hears questionable noises coming from the room next door. That's when it hits him, they're still inside a love hotel, and he just told her to get on top of him. His pants start tightening, and in a panic, he grabs Kita to move her off. But right then, the lights go out, and they end up awkwardly tangled up, facing each other in a very compromising position. Gojo still has his hands on Kita, and both of them are red-faced as they look at each other. Just as they start leaning in, the room phone rings, completely killing the mood. Gojo answers it and finds out their time is up. They're being asked to leave. Kita heads off to change, flustered by how close things just got. That night, Gojo bangs his head with one hand while the other deals with emotions. A few days later, Gojo gets a text from Kita asking for help. When he rushes over, she explains she can't go to the festival with her dad anymore, he canceled on her. Gojo reminds her she still has loads of homework to deal with. Kita admits she forgot because she was overloaded with part-time gigs. Curious, Gojo asks what job she's doing. He hands him a magazine with her photo, and for a second, he thinks she's famous. She explains she's actually an amateur model who got scouted by an editor at her salon. Gojo is shocked at how different she looks, and she tells him it's thanks to professional makeup. She also reveals she's working like crazy to save up for a pricey camera. Later, Kita suggests they watch a horror movie. Gojo isn't really into scary stuff, but she says it can't be that bad. She ends up shaking through the film, while Gojo surprisingly enjoys it so much that he rewatches scenes to study the costumes and effects. Afterward, Kita finishes up her homework and is glad there's no math, but when Gojo reminds her they had drills to complete, she realizes she left them at school. They head back to pick them up, and Kita says the school looks spooky after watching the horror film. Gojo remembers he needs groceries and invites Kita over for dinner. She lights up, happy to take a break from fried rice. On the way, they pass by a pool, and Kita walks too close. Gojo warns her, but she slips and falls right in. Panicking, Gojo jumps in to save her only to realize she can't swim. After pulling her out, he asks how she keeps going to the beach. Kita says she just goes to eat, hang out, and chill with her friends. She also loves watching how the sunlight makes the ocean sparkle. Kita asks if it's dumb to love the sea, even though she can't swim. Gojo says it makes sense he's obsessed with Hina dolls even though he doesn't make them. Then Kita lights up and suggests they find another festival and go together. Gojo reminds her about her homework, so she promises to finish it quickly with his help. That night, while Gojo works on one of his dolls, Kita updates him on her math progress. Later, he tells Kaoru he's heading out for the festival. Kaoru waves him off, looking hopeful about future grandkids. At the festival, Gojo's surprised by the huge crowd and wonders how he'll find Kita. Just then, she runs up in a cute yukata, spinning playfully. Gojo can't help but stare at her, completely mesmerized. When Kita notices Gojo staring, she teases him about being the kind of guy who loses it over a girl's neck. The second, his face turns bright red and he starts fumbling his words. She realizes she hit the mark and feels glad she wore a yukata. From that point on, she proudly keeps her neckline uncovered as they walk through the festival. She soon spots a stall selling candied apples and heads off to grab one. But after checking out a few booths, Gojo starts to panic, wondering what kind of monster could be hiding under all that cute makeup. Suddenly, they hear a loudspeaker announcement the fireworks are about to start. As they make their way over, Gojo admits that he's never actually watched the fireworks at the plaza before. Kita asks him how that's possible, but before he can answer, the show begins. Gojo stands there in awe, taking in the beautiful view, the sky lit up, and the cheerful crowd. In the past, he'd always be in his room, hearing fireworks from far away without ever seeing. But this year was different, and the big difference was Kita. As he looks over at her, she turns to look back, and for a moment, everything feels perfect, until she sticks out her blue tongue and totally ruins the vibe. After the event, Kita finds that her feet are sore and bruised from her sandals. When Gojo offers to go get her some band-aids, she says it'd be easier if he just carried her instead. So, he lifts her onto his back, and they chat about how fun the night was. Both agree they're glad they came, even if it didn't end perfectly. Kita says sorry for the trouble and promises to be more careful next time. Gojo smiles quietly, realizing that means they'll spend next year together, too. Later that night, as Gojo is about to sleep, he gets a surprise call from Kita. She tells him she watched the sequel to that scary movie and now can't sleep because of the creepy noises. She begs him to just talk to her until she passes out. Gojo agrees, and Kita starts rambling about all the summer stuff she didn't get to do. As Gojo slowly drifts off, Kita grins softly, thinking back on all the things they did share. Once she's sure he's asleep, she whispers that she loves him even if he won't hear it, and then gently ends the call with a quiet, "good night." And that's it for today's video. Guys, watch the following video, and I will catch you up in the next one.